Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Learn with Virali. I'm Virali, your guide on this PMP adventure. If you are new to my channel, I'm Virali, a certified PMP professional helping people to pass their PMP exams on the very first try. So if you are not subscribed to my channel yet, make sure to subscribe as it helps me to create more such kind of videos and offer help to the community. In today's video, we are going to dive deeper into something wherein most PMP students or candidates stumble upon having difficulty in understanding PMI's language of questions in your actual PMP exam. Like, have you ever wondered while reading the question thinking that I know the answer to this question, but something feels off when I go read the options? So, that is exactly what we are solving today. So, let's get started. So, before we dive in, let's look at what I'm going to cover today in this video. We will go over exploring PMI-isms, as in the specific language pattern that PMI uses in order for addressing their questions and their options, the trigger words that you need to watch for, and most importantly, how you're going to tackle these kind of question challenges that you would be seeing on your actual exam day. I'll also be sharing certain example scenarios or practice questions in order to address these kind of language patterns that we'll be applying onto those scenarios and learning how we can quickly finish that particular question and move on to the next one. So let's look at what is or what are those PMI terms or the specific language patterns, which we term it as PMI-isms. So what are PMI-isms? So think of PMI-isms as PMI's special dialect. It's actually not in English, but it's project management English. So what makes this tricky is that sometimes the correct PMI answer doesn't align to what you do in the real life. That's where you have to understand why this is going to matter. Many candidates get these kind of questions wrong, not because they don't know project management, but because they don't understand PMI's way of answering and asking questions. So we are going to understand each of these as we proceed further, but specifically understanding that particular special dialect which we identified as PMI-isms. Now let's try to decode that particular PMI-ism language, wherein it's going to be crucial for any PMP candidate to understand this language and answer questions appropriately. So when PMI asks, what do you do first? They are actually not asking about the chronological order. They want the most important action that needs to be taken as the next step. So when they say what to do next, that's when they want the immediate next step. Understanding these differences is going to be crucial for succeeding in your exam on the very first try. So please remember, if they are asking you what do you do first, make sure you understand the most important action that you have to take as a project manager. What do you do next? That's where you should encounter the immediate next step from the given choices of options. Then, if you have been asked, like, what is the most appropriate action in this scenario, with you being a project manager, you have to apply your PMI's best practices, putting in that servant leader hat on yourself and answering question with that PMI mindset. Next is dealing with the best scenario. So that's where what is the most efficient solution for this particular scenario should be found out from the given set of options. So now let's take a look at certain trigger words that we need to watch for while solving any questions on the actual exam day. We have to be careful to look for the first one that I have over here is should versus must. In our normal English terms, should is nothing but indicating the best practice or maybe a recommended action, whereas must indicates a mandatory requirement with no flexibility involved. So for example, if I say project manager should update the stakeholders based on the communication engagement or management plan. In that case, that is a should or a recommended action that needs to be done from a project manager's task perspective. But if I put it up in another way, saying that project manager must obtain a formal approval for any particular project, which is nothing but a mandatory process that needs to be done as a part of project manager's task. So understand the difference between should versus must. Be sure to find out these keywords in the question so that you can solve it faster and in an efficient manner, not getting those questions wrong as you do it in a faster pace. So now moving on to the second one, I have best versus most appropriate. So best is nothing but most effective or an efficient way to address any scenario given to you as a project manager. But most appropriate is going to be the solution that is going to be best aligning as per the PMI's processes. So for example, I can say the best way to reduce the cost is going to be this method, for example. But then that is going to be efficiency focused, which is going to be the best approach. But if I say that the most appropriate way to handle the change request is going to be first filing that change request, giving it to the PMO, wherein PMO approves it and everything gets through after that. So that is nothing but a set process that is being followed as per the PMI's processes. So that is the main difference behind best versus most appropriate. Moving on to the third one, which is where next and first. So you will see questions giving you like what should you do next as a project manager, or maybe what should you do first as a project manager. So next is nothing but the immediate chronological step, which is next as the name says. But if I talk about first, which is nothing but the most important action, which is not necessarily included in the chronological step. For example, if I say what should the project manager do next in the case scenario, and then I address the case scenario. In that case, I'm asking about the sequence based step that the project manager need to take in any scenario that is given to you. But if I say what should the project manager do first, which is nothing but it is going to be addressing the priority. So that is the main difference behind sequence based and priority based. Let's move on to the fourth one, which is to analyze versus review. Analyze is going to be doing a detailed kind of an examination or an evaluation, whereas review is going to be a quick check or an overview. For example, if I say analyze the performance data, so that is going to be an in-depth study or a detailed analysis that I need to do, versus review the status reports. So that is just going to be a general assessment or a quick overview that we can consider as a part of that scenario. Understand this difference, as these are the kind of questions usually popping up in the actual exam. So make sure you understand this difference and keep it in your mind. Next is ensure versus confirm. Ensure is taking the necessary steps to guarantee a particular task which is being completed, and confirm is nothing but you are verifying or validating the existing status that is being said to you. So that is nothing but you are confirming that whatever you have been said is actually correct. For example, if I say ensure requirements are met, so that is nothing but a proactive approach, which is to take the necessary steps to guarantee that the stakeholders are satisfied. Whereas if I say confirm that deliverables are complete, so as a project manager, I need to go verify that if my team said before in the meeting that we have completed all the deliverables that were a part of this particular sprint, then I need to go check whether the statement that I was told in the meeting is correct or not. So that is nothing but confirming the same status. I hope you got an enough idea in regards to these keywords, which you need to definitely print in your mind if you are planning to take your PMP exam anytime soon. Let's look at one of the real question example applying this PMI terms which we just learned. So the question says the project is behind the schedule. What should the project manager do first? immediately implement schedule compression techniques. Option B is analyze the root cause of schedule variance using schedule performance data. Option C is update the project status to reflect the current status. And option D is inform the stakeholders about the schedule delay. Take a minute to pause the video and think about the answer before you listen to the solution that I'm going to explain. Now, the correct answer over here is nothing but option B that we have. I'm just going to mark it over here as option B tells us what we are supposed to do as a project manager in case if my project is behind the schedule. Since I have been asked, the first thing that has to be done being a project manager means to address the priority, which is nothing but analyzing why project is behind, right? So option A is actually taking the immediate action, which is nothing but a quick fix to apply the schedule compression technique, which is actually not going to solve the problem in case if the same thing happens again. So you being a project manager, you always have to avoid taking the immediate steps or the actions if you are asked to do what you need to do first. So you have to make sure that you keep in mind that you as a project manager do not have to like go ahead and do something out there, but you have to first analyze its implications and then take the necessary actions based on it. Option C is nothing but it's documenting the status, so it's actually not going to solve the core issue that we are dealing with right now. And option D is communicating this issue, but it's not addressing the root cause, like why the project is behind, right? So the correct option here over here is going to be option B. Understanding that we applied the priority that needs to be set in order to solve this high priority issue. Let's take a second look at another example, which is again a real question example based on the terms that we discussed ahead. The question is, what is the most appropriate way to handle this stakeholder conflict? Now, in this case, I've been given 4 options to choose from. Schedule a meeting immediately to solve the issue. Option B is document the conflict in the issue log and analyze the impact. Option C is escalate the conflict to the project sponsor. Option D is create a workaround to avoid further conflict. The correct answer over here is going to be option B again. And we'll see why option B is the correct answer. So first, I'll go option by option, like starting with option A, which is to schedule a meeting immediately to resolve the issue. So you being a project manager should never do anything immediately as soon as you have a problem. You have to first go analyze the impact as we discussed in the first question solution that we were talking about a while ago. So first is definitely action oriented, but it skips the documentation part, so it's not the correct option choice over here. We'll come to option C now, which is to escalate the conflict to the project sponsor. Escalating is okay, but you have to back it up with proper analysis in regards to whatever impact it creates or what you should know before you go escalate it. It should not be a case that you call 911 or an emergency 108, but you don't know what is the emergency, right? So option C is definitely not the right option choice for this particular question. Talking about option D, it is nothing but to create a workaround to avoid further conflict. So D is actually avoiding rather than addressing the issue based on the wordings that has been mentioned over here. So the correct answer for this particular question is eliminating all the other options, which is A, C, and D. Correct option is option B. Now, if you notice in both the questions, PMI preferred answers are based on the documentation focus, which is dealing with the PMI's approved process. Like what needs to be done first, you have to look for the priority that you need to adjust based on the issue. And you always have to make sure that everything is well documented and you cannot skip any documentation steps, just like what we saw in this scenario. So you have to follow formal set of procedures being a PMI certified project manager. Okay, so now coming on to the strategy guide that has helped thousands of students to kind of apply these concepts on and gather or pass the exam at the very first try, making sure that they don't run out of the time and they are able to address all the questions smoothly and swiftly. So let us see each of these techniques that I have over here to go over it one by one to understand why you need to do this on the day of your exam. So first one is to read the question twice. Now you are supposed to read the question twice always. First to understand the scenario given in the question, and the second one to find out or spot those PMI trigger words that we just discussed. So those are like you are going to read the question twice for satisfying these two scenarios. First to understand the question, second to spot those trigger words that we just discussed. Now, when reading, focus on identifying those trigger words like maybe you have been asked to do what you do first, or best, or most appropriate, or next set of tasks being a project manager. So remember to put your PMI hat always on. In the real world scenario, you might jump straight to the action, but PMI wants you to follow a set procedure or a formal process. So look for those words in capital letters always specified in the question. They are actually usually crucial to understand like what is PMI really asking out of you. Let's look at some of the common traps that are going to be given or a part of each question that you would be asked on your exam day. So now the first one I have over here is quick fixes over processes. Choosing quick fixes over proper processes is the biggest or the most asked kind of a question. This solution is going to be much faster to perform, but it's actually not right from the PMI's perspective or is not right from the ideal PMI case scenario. Another common trap that I have listed over here is action over documentation. Yes, in the real world, you might take the action first and then document it later on, but while answering questions for your exam perspective, like while taking the PMP exam on the actual exam day, you need to document first and take the action later on. So process of documentation is going to come first. The third one is real world versus PMI world. So that is the crucial point of our discussion today. Like in your real world experience, different things would take different priorities. Like just what we discussed, you will take an action first in the real world and then you will document it later on. But in your PMI world, there is a different way of doing things. Like you have to document first and then take an action with the approval that you would be receiving as a part of any process. But documentation is always going to come first. Next is informal versus formal approaches. So that's where you have to understand PMI appreciates formal processes rather than informal discussions for any case scenario. So before we wrap up, let's reinforce the key points or the key takeaways from our discussion today. PMI consistently values process over quick action. So PMI always gonna value processes, not quick fixes. Second, documentation isn't just important, it's crucial from PMI's world perspective. So they always prefer prevention over reaction and formal approaches over informal ones like what we had discussed a while ago. Now you can think of this as if you're choosing the right answer that involves documentation and processes versus an immediate action, PMI usually prefers the documented process focused approach, so then you can count your answer as the correct answer. Definitely it is going to depend on question, but usually this is how PMI is going to line up the set of questions for your exam day. So I have created a detailed list of PMI language cheat sheet that we just covered today for you to download it from the description below. So you can download it as I just said from the description below. If you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe for more PMP exam tips. And if you are looking to join a study group where we can practice these concepts together, you can email me at learnwithvirali@gmail.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.